Hi, Highrock. This is Pastor Marcus here, coming at you from the quarantine zone, and we're feeling a little weird today. So is this okay? There we go. Whoa, that feels a lot better. We thought it'd be a good idea just to provide a place of contact and place of relationship, and also just to share a little bit about what we're thinking. I took these glasses off, but now that means I can't read the screen. We're hoping that this can just be a chance to see a familiar face, a chance to provide encouragement, a chance to provide a point of connection before we go on and join the main Highrock Network YouTube service, which has been pretty good for what it is. It's not as great as the real thing, which is kind of what I wanted to share a little bit about this morning. This is just some reflections that I've been thinking about this past week and the past few weeks as all this has been going on, and I thought it would be meaningful to share with some of you all. So obviously this has brought up a wave of different emotions in different ways and in different magnitudes. So much of our efforts throughout this time, and by our I mean the church, I mean the world, right, our jobs, so much of our efforts throughout this time have gone to simulating the real world connection. We are trying to get as close as possible to the real thing, right? Instead of going to the office, we're doing video calls, right? Instead of going to the movie theater, the movie theaters are actually releasing new things to us earlier to try to simulate that release feeling at home. Instead of worship services or sermons at church, we're watching YouTube services and we're listening to worship music through YouTube together. And these are all so great, right? It's amazing that we have these resources. I have had a newfound appreciation of technology the past few weeks. These efforts really are going to a great place. I think there's something beautiful in that. And so here we are in week 2 of doing things like this, and I'm just realizing that this is just not enough. It's not enough. Because of social distancing and quarantining, I have become keenly aware of how valuable gathering actually is to us as a church and to us as human beings. I have the language that I used in a conversation with Matt this past week is I have seen gathering as a sacrament. It maybe not be as like official and theological as something like communion and baptism, but gathering, right? Gathering, there is so much spiritual value to gathering just for the sake of gathering. Gathering for gathering's sake. Even if we are just in a room together and we don't make eye contact and we don't have a conversation, there is still value to sharing space together, to breathing the same air, to standing on the same carpet. And without that, I have felt so empty. I find it really ironic looking back, right? As a church, we just did our Living Lent series to prepare our hearts for Lent. And we reflected on what Lent is. We tried to find ways that we can identify with Christ, to identify and name and step into our need for the Lord. 1 month ago, actually this past week, we began the season of Lent and we gathered for Ash Wednesday. Our church was stripped down, our church was bare. It was a solemn experience. We sang, we heard reflections from Gary about our mortality, right? The phrase, "From dust you are and from dust you shall return," that phrase was spoken over each of us at that service. And now, here we are, right? In Lent, a season in which we hope to taste and experience spiritual wilderness somehow. But because of the world's events, we are experiencing a very real and physical, literal wilderness. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, we might have bitten more off than we can chew here. This is what's been on my mind this past week. This period of social isolation and distancing, it's starting to wear on me. There's a sense of sadness, there's a sense of emptiness, there's a void of connection that YouTube can no longer fulfill in some ways. But I come back to, for better and worse, like something here, this is what Lent is about. Lent is about feeling the lack of something. It's about feeling the not enoughness of our world and of our condition. And here we are, in isolation from each other. This is what it feels like to feel lack. right? Christ felt alone in the wilderness. Christ felt alone on the cross. He felt a need for God in that moment. Maybe for many of us right now, like me, we feel alone. Our souls are aching for something that looks like normal. Our bodies ache to just gather for gathering's sake. And I think back to Ash Wednesday, right? The theme of Ash Wednesday, we are mortal beings. We are inherently needy. We are nothing more than dust. This morning, as we prepare our hearts for worship at 10 a.m. with Highrock on YouTube, I don't want to try to spin this negative into a positive this morning, right? I'm not going to try to advertise ways that we can satisfy our needs for connection or try to get you as close as I can to the real thing. And if you're feeling lonely or isolated in this time, let's just turn that into an acknowledgement that I feel lonely and isolated, right? An acknowledgement that there is a cry for connection that comes inside of us. There's a cry for gathering. I want us to see this time as a time that we can sit and actually taste wilderness like Christ tasted wilderness. Right? We are tasting what it was, something like what it was that inspired Christ to say on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? Now, perhaps you're hearing all this morning and you're like, geez, Marcus, this is kind of dark. But maybe part of you is finding peace in this too. Christ has experienced something that looks like what we are experiencing right now. Life can feel furiously fast, but Lent and this season right now that we're in has forced us to stop and slow. We can feel fear. We may feel more mortal than we're comfortable with feeling. We may find our mortal bodies screaming for some sort of connection, the sacrament that's not a sacrament. And to that, I look at this and I say, yeah, we are in Lent, my friends. We are in Lent. I miss you all. I feel what life is like without you, and I don't like it. But that's kind of the point of Lent, to taste something like that here. Now, Lent always stops with Easter. It always ends with Easter, a season of resurrection and life and abundance. And this quarantine corona season, right, this is going to end too. This will end just like Lent ends every year. This is going to have a beginning and an end, an alpha and omega, for lack of a better term. And in this, daydream what Easter is going to look like. Daydream what it will look like when this ends. Think about how good it's going to be to hug that person again, or to share a cup of coffee in a public place again, to eat at that restaurant, to watch the Boston Red Sox play baseball. It was opening day this past week, and it kills me that we're not watching baseball this week, because it's our mortality, right? That we can breathe in our mortality in this season. I think that's what Lent wants us to do, and this is a way that we can do it. Not with fear, but with promise that the things that we do now, our sadness, our grief, our happiness, even temporary, is nothing compared. This is nothing compared to how great and how wide, how long, how deep the Father's love is for us, who formed us from dust. I pray that you have a good worship experience this morning. I pray that it's a time for you all to connect as a family, for you to listen to that spiritual longing inside of you that maybe you push down and ignore throughout the week. But it's through YouTube. It's going to be through YouTube. And you may not have a good worship experience. You may feel a lack. You may feel the lack of connection. You may feel like this morning is not enough for you. And yeah, it probably isn't enough. But it is in our lack, in our not enoughness, that Lent wants us to experience the love of Christ. That love that is too great to understand fully. And may we, even in this season, live into the joy that we have already obtained by the power of our Creator God. Our joy that will be made complete with all the fullness and of life and power that comes from our Creator. And I love the value that we are putting forward trying to cushion that cry. But sometimes I think there's value in the sake of crying. And I think that's the message of Lent. And I think that is something that we can glean from in this season too. So have a good worship. I really do miss you all. Hope you're having some fun stories that we can all share at the end of all of this. Hope your fridges are stocked and your conversations are rich and your books being read are abundant. So go in peace to love and serve the Lord this morning. Bye, guys.